Hi, this is John again, the owner and developer of VectorDecks. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how I created image files for the different type of rendered textures within VectorDecks resource palette. These files were created outside the VectorDecks and Vectorworks environment. I use a product called Adobe Photoshop. In here I created two templates I work with. One called Decking Textures 2x6 and the other Decking Textures 2x4. The 2x6 file I made exactly 5.5 inches by 5.5 inches, and I set the resolution at 300. Not sure if that resolution is the right way to go about it, but it works for me. I want to be able to print out these pictures at the highest resolution to make it look good. And then in the 2x4, I made it 3.5 by 3.5, and the same thing, 300 dpi. Now, both these files simulate the actual size of the type of dimensional lumber I'm defining here, a 2x6, 5.5, and a 2x4, 3.5. And on both of these, you'll see I created this gradient at the top and bottom, giving that eased edge or curved edge effect along the edge of the board. It's black to nothing, and then on the bottom black to nothing. In VectorDecks, the surface areas, like the decking surface and the steps, they're one large polygon that we apply a texture to simulate the boards. They're not actual individual boards drawn. So to simulate those boards, we needed to add these edges. That separates each board by its dimension, 5.5 or 3.5. If you're familiar with Photoshop, you can create these layers. And I put all those particular edges in a folder so I can turn them on and off. You see here I can turn those edges on and off. And then I created the different colors. And these colors are the current colors that you see in the different VectorDecks menus. I created a new one here called Teak. I'm going to go to that color. I go to the 2x4 also. These colors are easy to create. In Photoshop, you would just select the color palette and try to get the color you desire. And I also added in their filter, I can add noise to it. I added about 5% noise, giving it that composite decking type look to it. And once you're satisfied with the color, the next thing you need to do is save it as a file that has a name that's easily recognizable. So you see I have those other textures there in the background. I created a file called VTextures working. So I always have the old ones and I can see what I already have. But I'm going to define this file as Teak 2x6 and do a save. And we're going to do the same thing with that 2x4. We're going to go save as, and we'll call that Teak 2x4. And there's one more file I need to save. I go back to that 2x6 and do that. And I turn off the edges. And this file is going to be saved as Teak Trim. I'm going to do away with that 2x and just call it Teak Trim. And the reason why we're turning off those gradients, those edges, is that the trim is going to be a solid piece of wood in VectorDecks. It's not going to be a large surface. So the entire board is going to have that same color on the top edge, bottom edge, and on the face. So we don't need to have that grading effect. It's not going to be a bunch of boards. It's going to be one solid long piece of board. And that's pretty much it with creating the image file necessary for these different kind of finishes. Now we just worked with the surface area in the decking type of finishes, the 2x's and the trim with those solid colors. But this is the same process involved with any of the textures you'd like to create. I mean, let me open here, I have textures for lattice and other kind of finishes. And it's the same type of process that you'll be going through when you're defining other type of rendered textures. I just use this one as an example. But now we're ready to get back into VectorDecks and create rendered textures using those files we just saved.